he gets in this election. I think Donald Trump is going to get it next time anyways because of everything Hillary's done.
So there's a ton of people here. This is the RSVP line. Thank God I reserved a seat.
I think I'll be fine.
Well, now we're actually in the hall now. And they're filling up the seats one by one. The rest of the press is over here. Not that much seating. I mean, it is a decent-sized hall, but not that much seating.
Pretty major technical difficulties, and I apologise to you for keeping you waiting. Well, welcome everybody. We're ready to start. Yeah. So good evening.
Good evening.
My name is David Angel, and I'm the president of Clark University. You really are a great crowd. You don't have to do much to earn applause. Anyway, it's my pleasure to welcome you all to the Clark campus this evening. Now, if you're a bit like me, over the past few weeks, you've been a bit of a political junkie. How many of you have been political junkies? Yeah, pretty much all of us, right? Like me, I know you care deeply about the future of this country, and I've taken time over the last month at both conventions to listen to leaders from all parties as they share their vision of America. Last week, I was on a cross-country flight on JetBlue when President Obama spoke at the Democratic convention. So I was watching the speech, you know, on that teeny little seatback screen, kind of wedged into row 12 on a very full aircraft. Most of the time, I listened to the speeches at home, on my couch, with my family. And over these weeks, like you, I've heard some memorable, thoughtful, inspiring speeches. But there was something that was missing as I was listening to those speeches. Namely, the opportunity to listen together, to listen with other concerned citizens, residents of Massachusetts, who have taken the time to come out to deepen their understanding, our understanding, of challenges and opportunities facing this country. There's something special about being in a packed room with people who care, right? So let me begin. Let me begin by thanking you, each and every one of you, for joining us here this evening and demonstrating your commitment to the democratic process and your commitment to improving our community, our country, our world. Thank you. Thank each and every one of you. Of course, a packed room is only half of the equation, right? The other half is a remarkable speaker. And tonight we will have the opportunity to hear from United States Senator Elizabeth Warren. Senator Warren was elected to the Senate, United States Senate in 2012. You all know her bio, her impressive bio. Law professor, author, Massachusetts resident. Let's not discount that, right? A fearless and relentless leader in efforts to navigate the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis. And perhaps above everything else, a courageous advocate for the consumer and for middle-class families. We are truly fortunate to have this accomplished leader with us here this evening. Our democracy thrives on ideas, effective leadership, and policies that make a difference. Here at Clark, we embrace every single opportunity to deepen our understanding of ways to lift our community and lift our economy. And we're eager tonight, like all of you, to hear from Senator Warren. Now, a couple of things before I begin. First of all, please make sure your phones are in silent mode. You don't want to be that one who's embarrassed. So please help us out on all of that. Let's all be fully present and really, truly listening to what we will hear this evening. The second is an apology. Senator Warren worked really hard to put together a really careful, thoughtful PowerPoint presentation with 59 slides. And our text system blew up about half an hour ago. So I've had to apologize to Senator Warren that she throwing her a curveball, and I'm going to apologize to you. And I think that means we have to give Elizabeth Warren a really, really warm and special welcome. So please join me welcoming Senator Warren to Clark, to Worcester,
late afternoon, and we can fill a whole room of people to talk about policy. I love being the Senate for this. It happens everywhere. So, yeah, I had this great slideshow. You know, things happen. Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction, and thanks for your hospitality here. So here's what I thought I would do. First, I thought I would dance the slides. Watch me be a normalized curve. Because they really are kind of cool. But I thought what I'd do instead is I'll try to do kind of a short version, since, you know, it's just one person walking around up here, and I remember what that was like to have to watch one person for any length of time. So anyway, I'll try to do the short version of it, talk about it a little bit. I have to do a little bit of press when I finish up. We'll talk to those folks for a minute. And then for anybody who wants to stay and have a picture or say hello or whatever, we'll just set up a line and do that. This whole idea behind the slideshow was really just an experiment. And it came from two places simultaneously. One is my work that I did for 30 years before I ever ended up getting into the political end of the world. And it was work about what was happening to America's families, and particularly what was happening to families right in the middle. Because I thought it was just a very important test of where America was going. And so that's where part of this comes from, and it's just an extension and an update and more information that we have now. The other part of it comes from a very personal place, that I grew up in a family that we would describe ourselves as middle class, but kind of one of those families hanging on by their fingernails at the edges. My daddy had a lot of different jobs. When I was growing up, he sold carpeting, he sold fencing. He ended up as a maintenance man. I had 3 older brothers. They all were in the military. The oldest one was career military, 288 combat missions in Vietnam. I never pass up an opportunity. Construction, and for part of that time had a good union job. That's how he has a pension today. And he started his own small business, and when that one didn't work out, he started another. He was one of those guys who had the special spark and couldn't imagine working for anybody else. So me, I was a baby. I wanted to go to college to be a public school teacher. That's what I wanted more than anything in the world. And when I was growing up, after my brothers were all off in the military, my daddy had a heart attack. And it really rocked our family. There was a long period with no money coming in, lots of bills piled up, we lost the family station wagon, and we were like that close to losing our house. When my mom, who was 50 years old and had never worked outside the home, put on her high heels and her lipstick and squared her shoulders and walked over to the Sears and got a minimum wage job. And with that minimum wage job, she saved our family and she saved our house. And I think about that story because it was really, really hard. But we were really, really lucky. We got a second chance. We got a third chance. We lived in a world where a minimum wage job would support a mortgage and support a family. And so for me, these two threads come together to ask the basic question about what's happening right now to the families in the middle, to America's middle class. And here's my bottom line answer. It ain't working anymore. Families are really being left behind. And you can look at, you can just kind of run the flashes up on, as I do when I have slides up on the screen. But it is to think about things like that 1 in 3 people who has a credit file is in debt collection. Think about that. Young people are running up tens of thousands of dollars in debt just to try to get a college diploma or some post-high school training. 860,000 families filed for bankruptcy last year. That is more than the population of Middlesex and Suffolk County combined. Think about that. That's America, and that's America's middle class. Those are the folks right in the middle. So what this presentation was really about is the story about what went wrong. How did we go from having this solid, strong middle class to where we've ended up today? And so here's kind of how I tell the story. And that is, it starts in, oh, I have pencil, 1787. Oh, it really does. And it describes the fact we've been a boom and bust economy from the very beginning. Roughly about every 15 years, from the 1790s to 1929, we kind of slope up and things would start going better and more people would be at work and people would make some money. And then right off the edge, and not only would the speculators go down, it would drag down the shopkeepers and the farmers and the employees, and then the cycle would start again. And most people around the world thought it's just natural. You know, it's like weather or forest fires or something like that. In 1929, the big one hit, and it was so big it got its own name, the Great Depression. And we did a remarkable thing as a people at that moment. We said, we can do better. We don't have to live in a boom and bust world. we can actually make things better, and we can make it better for all of us. And there were two fundamental parts to that. The first was that we were basically going to rein in the financial system and say that you don't continue to make this kind of money by crazy speculation and by taking on a lot of risks that take our economy up and bring it back down. We're going to make finance something that supports the rest of the economy. And so we did three things. First one was we made it safe to put money in banks. That was FDIC insurance. The second thing we did is we said we're going to separate crazy risk-taking on Wall Street from boring banking. Your savings account and your checking account was known as Glass-Steagall. And the third thing is we said we're going to put a cop on the beat. Not Main Street, a cop on the beat on Wall Street, and we called that the SEC. And there were some other pieces to it. But with those three things, we basically pulled our financial system back into shape, and we made it steady. And it worked, right? No crashes for more than half a century. The second thing we did is we said, we're going to invest in ourselves. We're going to invest in each other. We're going to invest in building the future. We're not a world of each one out there for himself or herself. We're going to do some things together. And we invested in education. A grateful nation said to returning GIs, we'll help you get a college diploma. NDEA loans. There may be people in this room who got NDEA loans. I'm one of them. NDEA loans, where the government said, we'll help you go to college, and we'll help forget a lot of that debt. If you will do things that we think are good for the country, like going to science or mathematics or teaching public school, that we want to help you get an education. We made investments in our public universities. We made more investments in our schools. We figured that if our children were better educated, they'd have more opportunities. The second thing we did is we invested in infrastructure, in roads and bridges, in power grids, and we built the TVA, that powered 6 states down south. We built in the 50s an interstate highway system. We built the things that would be helpful to all of us. And here's how I think about that part of it. Nobody knew what the next great small business was going to be. Nobody knew who was going to start it, but we were pretty darn sure they were going to need electricity. We were pretty darn sure they were going to need roads and bridges to get their goods back and forth to market. We were pretty sure they were going to need mass transit to be able to get their workers to be able to come in and do the work. So we all made the investment. We all pitched some of our money in, our tax money in, and we built something that said, it's going to be good for all of us. Somebody starts a business, the business takes off, that's great, but it also produces great jobs for everybody else. We made it good to invest here in America, to build those businesses here in America, to build those jobs here in America. And the third thing we did, the remarkable one, what a people. We invested in research, in scientific research, in medical research, in engineering research, in social science research. We had the idea that if we built this giant pipeline of great ideas, that our children and our grandchildren would build a future that we could only dream of. And we thought that was a good thing to do. And here's the thing. We made those investments, we brought the financial system under control, and it worked. It worked. We built a strong middle class, and it worked across the board. It wasn't a perfect America. There was racism, there was sexism, there was homophobia, but we were bending it in the right direction. It worked not just for the richest, it worked for the upper middle class, the working class, however you wanted to find it, for the poor. We were lifting all the boats. And God, I have this fabulous slide. Here's what this slide shows you. It shows that from 1935, is kind of where I picked this up, right in the middle of the Great Depression, to 1980, You watch GDP do this. All the new income created in America was divided. And here are the two groups I looked at. The top 10% in America and the 90%, just everybody else. We threw in the middle class and the upper middle class and the poor all together. So how did the income that came in get divided? And the answer is from 1935 to 1980, the 90% of America got 70% of all income growth generated in this country. It went to us. So what went wrong? And then I hold up a picture of Ronald Reagan. What I do is I put up a picture of Ronald Reagan to talk about the fact that we fundamentally changed our policies. We went from being a country that said, we're going to invest in the middle and let that create opportunities for everybody else. Let it create opportunities, more opportunities for poor kids, more opportunities for kids making their way. We're going to invest in the middle, which had been the test for almost half a century, and shift it over to what was called trickle-down economics, which basically just means help the rich and powerful become richer and more powerful, and surely that will somehow trickle down on everybody else. I'm serious. That is the basic theory. I'm not making this up. That's it. I mean, they gave it other names and blah, 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 but that was it. That was it. So, what happens when you make that shift? And yeah, some of this starts in the 70s, you know. But basically, it kind of starts right there in 1980. And the answer was, first look at the financial system. They changed it, right? They took the cops off the beat on Wall Street. They punched holes in Glass-Steagall and then finally just knocked it down entirely. They called it deregulation, which was, ooh, so cool, it was such a deregulation. And the answer was, no, it was just fire the cops. So that those guys could do whatever they wanted to do, make money however they wanted to make money, and the odds they would get caught just kept going down. The number of things that were illegal just kept going down. And the banks could get bigger and more profitable. They could suck up more risk, right? Suck up more profits. And then, when the whole thing fell apart, as it was bound to do in 2008, they pushed all those risks off onto the taxpayers, who ended up doing the bailout. So part one was to dismantle the system of rules and regulations that had kept the financial system in service to the rest of the economy. The second part of it was the question about investments and the rest of us. And that one started in a different place. It started with the idea that one way you make the rich and powerful, richer and more powerful, we just did the more powerful, is you make them richer by cutting their taxes. So tax policy fundamentally changes, and I've got a great slide on that. It goes, right? So marginal tax rates, the amount that the richest people pay, start going down. Loopholes start opening up for giant businesses. Corporations that used to pay in total about 1/3 of all the revenues in the country back in the earlier period dropped down to about 10% of revenues now. So they tax cut, and guess what happens when you do all those tax cuts? There's no money left for education, for infrastructure, for basic research. And in fact, that's exactly what's happened. So the cutbacks in education now mean that the United States government makes a profit off the backs of students on student loans. That is obscene. That we have reduced support for state schools, 20%. What's happened on infrastructure, let me count the ways that we have underspent on infrastructure. The American Society for Civil Engineers now gives our infrastructure rating a D+, and I gotta tell you, some roads I drive on, I think they're grading easy. But literally, we are, by some estimates, about $3 trillion underspent on maintaining and expanding our infrastructure where we should be in the 21st century. And research. We have cut as a proportion of GDP our investments, our government investments in basic research by about 40% in the second time period as opposed to the first. And what has been the consequence of that? So go back to my first one about the 90% and the 10%. So from 1980 to 2015, the latest year for which we have data, you watch GDP continue to go up. Don't let anybody tell you this country's broke. GDP, man, that GDP's like, looks just like this, start to finish, right? Keeps right on going up. So we're generating all this new income. How much went to the 90% of America? Answer, 0. It's actually 4/10 of 1%. It's not even a whole 1%. It is essentially, effectively 0. The top 10% got 100% of the growth in income, not in 1 year, not in 5 years, 1980 to 2016. In other words, we have a country that because of the policies that we have followed nationwide have enriched the top and not just left the poor behind, have left all of the rest of America behind. Because this is terrible. I need to do an uplifting speech, but I am, because here's the uplifting part of this speech. This is really bad, but what's bad is stuff that we control. So here's how I look at this. Every time you hear somebody talk about gridlock, keep in mind, gridlock's working for somebody. Now think about that, right? It's working for somebody who wants to make sure that CEOs don't go to jail when they break the law, right? It's working for somebody who wants to keep every one of those giant tax loopholes. It's working for somebody who doesn't want to shut down the dirtiest coal plant left in America. Gridlock has become part of an American agenda that works for somebody. And that takes me to what I see as the heart of this story. It's about who the government works for. And my view is the government now works for a very small and concentrated number of very rich and very powerful people and corporations. And that the evidence is just pretty much inescapable. So I have like this great shocking slide that shows, I'm not trying to give you a hard time, I just want you to know what it is. And I will come back and do the slide sometime. The 200, it's not just campaign contributions, which are just obscene. It shows the $200 million that politically active organizations spent back in 1980 lobbying Congress, and that's a lot of money. And then it shows how by 2002, that had gone to about $1.3 billion. So you watch what looked like a big stack of money become really tiny because there's an even bigger stack of money. And then it goes to the stack of money by 2012. And we're talking about $3 billion, right? And the numbers just keep going up. And it's not just campaign contributions, not just lobbying. It's every way to influence Washington possible. It's about financing think tanks and so-called independent organizations that just so happen always to come to the conclusion that the industry that paid them wants them to come to, right? It's about the revolving door. It's about the fact, man, this is one that just, if you're not already ready to spit this one on me. Wall Street businesses, big financial firms that pay bonuses to their employees to go work in high-powered government jobs for just a handful of years, making policies that will help those same companies day after day after day. The revolving door, every part of this. So it all pushes in the same direction. Conclusion, they've got money and they've got power, and it's concentrated. And they have captured our government. So how do I turn this into something uplifting? The answer is, we live in a democracy and we've got something on our side. We've got voices and we've got votes, and we've got a whole lot more. Talk about in this is what we can do together. And I talk about the importance of volunteering, of raising your hand, to volunteer, whether it's for getting someone elected, whether it's on a particular issue that you want to lobby your Congress on, but getting engaged and getting involved. Because democracy won't survive on its own. We've now got the evidence. We've now watched this play out for 35 years. And 35 years has told us that this country is fundamentally changing. And I feel like we're getting down to like the last minutes that are available to us to pull this back and to head it in a better direction. So I talk about the kinds of questions that we ought to be asking our elected officials or people who want our votes. And this is true, I'll just be blunt, whether they're Republicans, whether they're Democrats, or whether they're independents. If somebody wants to go to Washington and work for you, then you need to be asking some really hard questions. And the opening question for me is whether or not they will work to overturn Citizens United and said in this presentation, this kind of truncated view, wouldn't be surprised to hear a second one that I think is worth asking about is whether or not they are really willing to hold Wall Street executives accountable. You know, a kid gets caught with a few ounces of drugs and risks real jail time. A CEO helps launder millions of dollars in drug money and gets a bonus. That is wrong, and it is time for that I ask now, and that is, are you willing to demand that the top 10% pay more in revenues so that we can afford that? And I'm just going to say one last thing that was, two last things that are in the slides. I know I said I would do this really quick, but I kind of get into this. And there is one more little piece of this, because there are lots of people who will listen so-called sympathetically up to this point. They'll say, oh, yeah, it's all terrible stuff. But we just can't afford it. Pie in the sky. You know, you're just totally unrealistic on this. Can't do it, never could. You know. It's just not realistic. In other words, find a way to get you not to vote, to get you not energized, to get you not to do something. I just picked one example that I do on this, and that is if we closed one loophole, and the loophole I picked for this is kind of a medium loophole. It's not the biggest loophole, it's not the smallest loophole. It's the loophole, you're gonna love this loophole. It is a loophole that says giant corporations can deduct the full amount, no matter how big it gets, of bonuses that they give to CEOs, and it will be tax deductible. In other words, supported by your taxes, because somebody's going to have to make up this gap, right? So if we stitch that up and said, big corporations can still give bonuses, they're just not going to get a tax break for doing it. Oh, shocking. Right up there on the edge on this. That $55 billion over 10 years. $55 billion. With $55 billion, well, let me just pick a couple. We could almost, it's not quite enough money, but it's very close, refinance every student loan in America to bring down the replace every water pipe in Flint, Michigan, and 67 other cities in America. We could almost double the amount that we spend on research on both cancer and Alzheimer's. We could give a raise to everybody on Social Security, everybody on disability, every veteran of the same amount that CEOs got last. Yeah, there's a lot we could do. And you multiply. Okay, we'll do them all. We'll refinance. You're ready for all of it. I'm ready to. Because here's the thing. I gave you one. Most people think you can pretty easily find about 20 of those. And if we would close up some of those loopholes, if we would say that our government and our tax system are supposed to work again for the 90%, then we have the money to do the things that we need to do to build a future. And when I say a future, I don't mean a future just for some of us. I mean a future for all of us, for all of our children. I started this in a very personal place, and I want to end it in a very personal place by saying there was a time when I was a young mom, and I have a great picture. I used to dye my hair brown. It's amazing, isn't it? And I'm sitting there with my two kids, and I was trying to get myself off the ground as a young professional. I had two little kids, I was on my own. And there were a lot of days I really did think I was not going to make it. I just wasn't going to be able to do it. It was all going to fall apart. And I look at that picture and think how lucky I got. Now, I got lucky in 3 ways. The first way I got lucky is my Aunt Bee moved in with me and helped take care of those kids and helped get my life back on key. The second way I got lucky is the second time I married the right guy. But the third way I got lucky is that I grew up in an America that was an America of second chances. It was an America that was investing in opportunities. It was an America where we still believed that we were going to build something better in the future, and that meant hire more people, and that meant pay them, and that meant give them a chance, and if they fall off, they could get a second chance, and they could get a third chance. I believe in that America. That's what gets me. I believe in that America. Because it is that America where the daughter of a janitor could become a United States Senator.